Hello. So in the previous video I showed you how we make a relationship between this sales object and the contact object under the common application. Now, as I was saying in my previous video, let's say we want to automate some of the actions that we can do on this object regarding the contacts. So for example, let's say we have a dynamic choice list uh, in sales custom object 1 that points out to the contact. I'll create that dynamic choice list right now and expose it on UI. Okay, so I call my dynamic choice list contact DCO. Let's hit next. So let's pick up the contact from the list here, and I want displaying it for the user to see the name of the contact. I won't add any data filter. You can do that if you want to. Let's click submit. Now let's go to pages, and I'll expose this dynamic choice list in the details of the custom object and on the creation page. I'll start with the details. So let's go to pages, edit the details layout, and put your field on UI. Now save and close. Okay, let's click done, and now let's do the same for the creation page layout. I'll make a copy just like I did for details. Save and edit. And expose the field. Now the idea is when I create or update the record and I set a value in the dynamic choice list, I want the contact selected in the TCL to be automatically added under the subtab we have in this object. Now to do that, we will need to create some scripts. Basically two scripts. One script will execute upon record creation and one script will execute upon record update. Let's make the first script for the creation, and I'll select here before insert. This will execute when I click save and continue or save and close. I'll give it a name. Now how this script will work. I have actually written a tutorial or a lesson on my personal blog on my Oracle community. Here it is, and it states how to create many-to-many relationships in Groovy. Basically what we will need to use is the three entities where we are dealing with in many-to-many relationship. We'll use the source object, the intersection object, and the target object. And the script will look something like this. You can go ahead and go to my Oracle community and search for my blog, and you'll see the Groovy 40 lesson, all this, and you can also see the video I have there for this specific post. Now what we basically do is we are going to use the intersection. Basically we are adding records into the intersection object. So because in the dynamic choice list we will have an existing contact, so we'll take that party ID and use it to add records in the intersection object, and that will make it so that in the subtab you'll see that specific contact. So let's actually take a quick copy paste from here. and I'll explain how we make all these attributes. They're also explained right here. So let's go and let's put it like this. Okay. The first thing we need to do is actually to get the party ID of the contact selected in the dynamic choice list. Now in our case, our dynamic choice list, it's called contact TCL. Let's insert this for a second right here. To get the party ID of the contact, we need to add this thing right here. So we need to put ID and then underscore C. And this will be the party ID of the contact. Now once we have that, we need to call upon our intersection object. So we'll use new view function to instantiate this object. Now let me get all these details. Let me get this code from here. I'll put it in my notepad here, and let me cancel for now. And let's go to the intersection object. I'll get the API name. I'll make a note of it right here. Let's go also to the custom object itself and get the API name from there also, and make a note here. So this is in the section, and this is the object. Now using these two, we'll make our code. So let's go back to server scripts, create, and before insert, let's say add contact at creation, and let's take this from here and let's adjust it for our case. Now, so first thing is to get a party ID of the contact. Now in our case, I said the name of our dynamic choice list is contact DCL underscore C, so the party ID will be found in this attribute. You see, when you create the dynamic choice list, the application will do three things. It will create you the field itself, like this. It will create in the backend an attribute that holds the primary key of the object from which the dynamic choice list pulls its data. In our case, it's party ID because we are dealing with contacts, and it has this format. And it will also create a related object, which you can actually see here in the palette under fields. This is the object that it created when we made the dynamic choice list. Right? So these three things will be created anytime you create a dynamic choice list. In our case, we only need the party ID of all of those. So let's take it and put it here. Now, next I said we need to instantiate or call upon the view of the intersection object, and we use for that the Groovy method new view. I said our intersection object is called like this, so we'll take this and just replace it here. Now we need to make the code to add actually records into here, and basically this is the entire code. First row here is we define an object, a variable basically, that will call upon this create row function from Groovy. Then we'll use this object here to actually set attributes on a few of the fields, or not really fields but attributes of this intersection object. And there are two of them that we need to worry about. The first one will actually set the ID of your custom record from here. So the primary key of all of your records in the custom object is called ID, and the attribute we need to put this ID in from the intersection object looks like this. Let's take this and make then pull it apart to see what it is from. It is formatted. It is comprised of. So let's put it like this. Okay. 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 So let's go back to my blog and actually take this from here. Let's put it here to have it in our view field. Okay. So the source object comes here at the beginning. In that case it was campaign. In our case our source object is actually this one. So we take this one and we place it right here. Now this part here you just leave it as it is. It's ID underscore src, then goes underscore, and here we have again our custom object name, but this time with underscore c next to it. This is the full API name. Okay, so let's replace let's take custom object name and place it here. Now here we have a keyword, let's call it like that, 2, and this is the name of your intersection object or the relationship. So we'll take it from here and just replace this here. Okay. 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 Now I remove the spaces. Now you can take this from here and just replace this entire attribute here. Okay, so this is the first attribute I need to set with the ID of our custom object. Now the second one is pretty much the same thing, but this time it's for target. So let's take this one apart, just like before. Right. So as you can see at the beginning we have the target object API name, which is in our case is contact, and actually the API name of contact is actually person. You can check this by going to common and contact and see there how it's called, or you can just actually call upon new view function here and you'll see the API name. If we do this, we will get a pop-up, and we can search for our standard object here, contact, and we see it's called profile. Here it's so person profile, but actually in here the target name it's just person. Okay, so we just leave this as it is and let's remove the spaces. Now here again we have, just like in this case, we put again the API name of the standard object, of the target object more precisely. We use the to keyword, and here we need our intersection object API, which is this one right here, and there we go. We have our second attribute, which will be set with the party ID. Okay, and finally we are calling upon the new view, the object view again, which is called in this variable, and we use the insert row to insert a new row in this object. Now this code will execute when I create a record and I set a value in that dynamic choice list. So I will actually use some logic here. I will say if the dynamic choice list is set with a record, so it's not null basically. Execute this whole thing, otherwise don't do anything. So let's validate, let's see if I wrote everything correctly. Okay, so everything checks out, and save and close. Now let's test this at creation. So I'll go to my custom object, I'll create a new record, let's say my second record, and 1 second, and I'll select a contact from this list, let's say this one, and now I'll click save and continue, and let's see if we get any errors. No errors, at least during the creation. And now let's see if this contact here will sit in the subtab, and there you go, we have the contact right here. Okay, so that takes care of the creation part of our records. Now let's add code for when I update the dynamic choice list on an existing record from the custom object. Let's go back to application composer. Basically the code is the same, but we will just introduce a bit more logic into it. So I'll just copy paste this part from here. I'll click new. I'll create a before update trigger. And let's put the code here. Right, so this doesn't change, but I said, what if I want to, update the dynamic choice list, and when I update that to another value, I want the new value to be added to our subtab and the old one to be removed. Now we can do that by adding some logic here in our code. So I'll use if. First thing will be to check if the dynamic choice list is changed. So is attribute changed. I mistyped here. And I'll put my dynamic choice list. Okay, so actually I'll put it like this with the actual name from UI. So if is attribute changed, and we have an ID, so not equals null. Execute this. Else if again, if this is changed, and equals null. So basically, if I am removing the record from my dynamic choice list, we'll go through our subtab, through our intersection records, and we'll remove the specific record that was previously set in the dynamic choice list. So let's search for the related collection that belongs to this intersection object, and we can see it in the palette here. So this is the intersection object, and this is the related collection. So let's insert this here somewhere. Now let's define a variable equals this, and we'll use a while loop to iterate through the collection records. Okay, now we need to access each row, so define row equals next, and while we access it we move the cursor to the next one, and now we'll add some logic to see what exactly we need to remove. So I said if uh, if we had some value here in the dynamic choice list and then we remove that value, we want the value that was here to be removed also from the subtab. So we know that the party ID is held into this particular attribute from the intersection object, so we'll use this one and say row dot equals now when we remove a value from here, basically we need to use something like this, because we need the previous value, not the current value would be null, and the previous value is the one that we actually want it to be removed. So we'll take the attribute from here and we'll use a specific Groovy method called get original attribute value. Okay, so and here we'll remove the specific row that we find. So we use the row and the method remove. Okay, now we took care of two cases when actually let's add here one more thing to the logic. So if the previous value was actually a null, so the first case is when we change the attribute the dynamic choice list and we set a value to it. There was no value before and now we set a value to it and we want that particular contact to be added. The second case is where we already have a value in the dynamic choice list and now we remove that value, so the current value of the dynamic choice is null. And there's one more case we need to take care of, it is when we had a value in the dynamic choice list and we switch it to a new value. So basically we'll use pretty much the same code right here. So I'll just copy paste and I'll change here it's not null, so we change the value in here. That means it was a value already there and we change it to something that it's still a valid value, and we want to remove the previous value. Okay, and the code is pretty much the same here, and let's put a default, else do nothing. So that should take care of all the cases. Let's see what I have forgotten. Okay, so if okay, I didn't close this this here. Okay, now okay, so if okay, let's see. Okay, now let's go in UI and test this out to see if we have any errors. So I said we will use this code for updates. So we have no value here and we want to add the new value in the list. So let's put something here, let's say, oh no, this one, and let's click save. And in here we have the value. Now let's change this value to something else, for example this one, and now this one should be added in the subtab and the previous one should be removed from the subtab. Let's see, and it seems it didn't work. Okay, so we might have a problem in one of our in the last part of our code, but let's see if, okay, so we set here null, and let's see, add the value here. I save. This new value should appear in the list. Now if I remove this and save, the value should be removed, right? Okay, so since we have only one problem there in the code, let's see what we did wrong. Okay, so here, okay, so our first case was we had no value in the dynamic choice list, and then we put a value there, and this seems to be working. The second case is we had a value and now it's null. So let's add here one more condition to enforce this block of code is executing. So let's say the original value was not null. Okay, so the previous value was not null, but now it's null, and we want to remove that. And here, let's enforce this one also. So the previous value was also not null, and now it's also not null, but it's changed. And this should execute this part here. Oh, of course, that's why it didn't work, because we also didn't add the logic here to add the new value from the dynamic choice list. So we'll do that right here. Okay, as you see, this block of code never changes. Once you make it, you can use it in multiple places. And this was like this. Okay, now let's try again, see what we get. Okay, my first record. So we have no value here, we put a value, save, the contact is added, remove the value, we add a new one, we save again, and now a new record is added here, and the previous one, if you remember the name, it got removed. Now if I remove this also and leave this blank and save, we should have that record removed from here. Okay, so that's pretty much how this works. Now I'll give you the link in the KM that comes with this video for this part here, so you can read in more details. You can also watch the video here. It's pretty straightforward. Once you manage to make this code here, you can use it to automatically add your contacts into the subtab, and this can work for any other object instead of party ID. I don't know if you're using opportunities, that will be optid. This doesn't changes. The method doesn't changes. You just need to adjust these parameters here and here according to your specific case.